Hello everyone and welcome to Total War News. Today's topic, patch 4.2, the Tzeentch units update. I'm Cody Bonds and welcome to Total War News. Today we'll be going through the news, obviously, and holding all commentary through the end. We'll be taking it to you on the phone lines out there to find out what you think about the update, and obviously happy Valentine's Day to you all out there. All right, let's jump right into it, shall we? Patch 4.2, the Shadows of Change update for Tzeentch. Now, Tzeentch obviously is the one who probably had the best units in the previous DLC, for being honest, but with all the changes coming with patch 4.2, Total War felt that a lot of people needed more stuff added in here, and Tzeentch obviously is one of them. So, I'll be reading it directly from the blog post to you all you out there. Hi everyone. Before I get into the details on the new additions for Tzeentch, I wanted to talk to you about the release date and where we are as of today, because that was a concern at the end of the last blog post. The team are still working flat out to finish things up, and we found a few things at the start of this week that we need to address before handing things over to you. I'm really pleased to say that the team is making great progress through these last few changes, and we are still on track to release to you later this month. But the release won't be this week, which we had originally been trying hard to hit. I'll be back later this week with more information on the extra characters and units coming to Kislev, as well as to update you further on the release plans. Before we dive straight into things, if you haven't read the last blog post entry focused on Gan Cathay, you can do so, and it's linked right there, or you can just watch my previous video on the subject. They both do the same thing. Right, on to the Tzeentch additions. Listening to your feedback on characters and units, which you have shared with us since the release of Shadows of Change, we have focused on improving the melee offering at Tzeentch's disposal for their lords and heroes. Tzeentch armies have always heavily leaned on magic, but we understand that having those hard-hitting frontline generals and heroes are important in balancing out your armies. This is exactly what we have added to the roster for you in the form of the Chaos Lord of Tzeentch and the Exalted Hero of Tzeentch. We'll have also taken the opportunity to add a further 2 new units into the DLC for Tzeentch, which we'll cover below. To broaden the connection between Tzeentch and the Beastmen, which we find first established with the introduction of the Zangors in the DLC's original release, which, to remind you all, will not be getting beaks, likely due to Games Workshop's particular stance on that being an Age of Sigmar unit, but that's obviously coming from Total War's side. They're now adding Centaurs of Tzeentch. Having additional Chaos-aligned Beastmen in the Tzeentch roster is something that we have always wanted in order to best represent the various forms of Chaos, and the Centaurs of Tzeentch will pack quite the bestial punch on the battlefield for you. We have also heard your feedback on the appearance of Zangors in the game and your expectations of them having beaks, which I just spoke about a moment ago. I haven't read this before right now, so this is getting live alongside of you here. To be clear, in the Warhammer Fantasy Battles universe, Zangors don't have beaks. Instead, they have much more closely resemble the appearance of a classic Gore from the Beastmen roster, which have a brutal and bestial look with teeth and jaws rather than an avian, bird-like appearance. Rather than being a separate offshoot species of Beastmen, they are instead Gore, who have sworn allegiance to the Lord of Change. Our second edition comes in the form of a demonic flying Changebringers, a classic Tzeentch unit from the Storm of Chaos book, released way back in 2004. Geez, that was 19 years ago. I had my 20-year reunion last week, or a couple months ago, so I know that date. These flamers ride discs of Tzeentch into battle, making them a fast and fearsome opponent. As with all the additions, I'll cover them in greater detail below. So, let's get to it. The Chaos Lord of Tzeentch. Having created a variety of marked characters and units with the release of the Champions of Chaos for the Warriors of Chaos to field, we really wanted to come back and flesh out some of the missing cast, giving you the options to create the ultimate Chaos army that you have always wanted. So, just like with those mentioned units, the Chaos Lord of Tzeentch will be available for both Tzeentch and Warriors of Chaos races. Get a twofer here. And the lore quote is, "Those few who succeed upon the twisting path of Tzeentch become the world's most otherworldly of all Chaos champions. They are blessed with both exceptional warrior skills and the arcane powers of the Lord of Magic. This deadly combination make them cunning leaders and lethal warriors who command their armies with uncanny presence." All right, we got a Lord of Tzeentch right there. I do love the eye motif. That is so close to the Thousand Suns for any Space Marine fans out there. It's like, yeah, that's just what that looks like, which is pretty cool. Big, beefy, lots of golden eyeballs, man. All right, gameplay overview. The Chaos Lord of Tzeentch is built for combat. Carrying his trusty halberd, it makes him adept at fighting monsters and large creatures. He can certainly go toe-to-toe with some of the biggest foes the Warhammer world has to offer. He's also great at holding his ground through the use of his expert charge defense and charge reflection passive abilities. His abilities will be marked by Tzeentch. Master of the Mind, the Chaos Lord of Tzeentch benefits from the Mark of Tzeentch, which grants him magical attacks and a barrier by default. The True Power, armed with a heavy suit of Chaos armor, a towering shield, and a magical halberd, the Chaos Lord of Tzeentch is a defensive juggernaut who excels in fighting large targets, especially when mounted on a Disc of Tzeentch, essentially becoming a character-level Doom Knight. As a disciple of Tzeentch, they're also a powerful tyrant and fearsome leader. The Chaos Lord of Tzeentch inspires his followers and emboldens their resolve by using the Change or Die ability, which is a Tzeentchian twist on Standard Die. He can improve the leadership and damage resistance of nearby friendly troops. He also makes use of the Paragon of Change ability, which recharges the barrier of nearby allies. For mounts, they get the Chaos Steed, the Chaos Chariot, and the Disc of Tzeentch. I don't know why I did it like that. Oh, man. Available to Tzeentch and Warriors of Chaos. Exalted Hero of Tzeentch Hero. When we started the process of finding a suitable model to best represent this character, we knew we wanted to do something a little different and special. So we went back, really far back into the Warhammer archives, looking at the various depictions of Tzeentch champions to have taken the form of. Needing a melee-focused character, one model really stood out, which I'm lucky to say even I have in my collection. Not me personally, obviously the person writing this. I've just now gotten into Warhammer Old World, so I don't have the old metal. And they also still really need to paint it. And clearly, they also need to take it out of the box. The Tzeentch champion with 2 swords from the early 90s. And multiple heads? Multiple heads. Okay. The Exalted Hero of Tzeentch are ostensibly the most bizarre and macabre of the Lord of Change's mortal servants. Their armor is typically Tzeentchian, inlaid with bands of gold and bluish silver, and assembled from strangely curving components. But it is the god of magic's generous gift of 2 extra heads that sets his exalted heroes apart from others on the battlefield. It's a change that irrevocably affects the mind, splitting a hero's mortal personality into 3 conniving extremes. With eyes sealed shut, the central head jeers the whims of the other 2 personalities dwelling in the leering Cycloptean heads on either side. Yet, with a singular will, the creature swings its weapon with the Tzeentch-imbued strength. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right. Gameplay overview. The Exalted Hero is a melee specialist, using his magical attacks and high weapon strength to get into the thick of the action. He's armed with a mighty halberd, to be in the keeping with the rest of our Tzeentch roster, rather than the dual swords that his character takes inspiration from in its miniature form. He has a solid melee defense that will sustain him long into the fight, just like his Lord counterpart, and he is adept at taking a charge with expert charge defense and charge reflection passive abilities. As usual, they're marked for Tzeentch, so they mean they get the barrier ability. They're an anti-large specialist with their halberd, and the ability to reliably duel monstrous infantry, and they're an opportunist, which means they're always scheming and seeking a greater path to glory. The Exalted Hero of Tzeentch takes command if the Lord is slain, bolstering the leadership of the army as he assumes command. We will come back and discuss that one later. Chaos. For mounts, he gets the Chaos Steed, the Chaos Chariot, and a Disc of Tzeentch. They're available, like before, to Tzeentch and the Warriors of Chaos. Again, pretty cool. Centaurs of Tzeentch. Tzeentagors. Zentagors? Centazeentches. Tzeentches. I don't know. Got to come up with a better nickname than Centaurs of Tzeentch. As mentioned earlier, we'll call them Purple Horsies. Purple Horsies. My Little Ponies. My Little Magic Ponies. Yes. As mentioned earlier, our thoughts were to expand on the connection of Chaos as it has across its many followers. And in the case of Tzeentch, using the Chaos Mark system, we opted for the Centaurs to provide bestial cavalry to add versatility to what is normally quite a missile and magic heavy focused army. Like with the Tzeentch, these creatures have been developed based on the setting of Warhammer Fantasy battles, so no beaks or other things that you might associate with Tzeentch. in Age of Sigmar, and keeping our content true to the source material. Just like the Zangors, this unit will be available to both Tzeentch and the Beastmen races to play with, and the team and I have plans for how we can improve the offering of further Chaos-marked Beastmen for you in the future. Interesting. Beastmen are creatures of pure chaos, and so tend to exalt all four ruinous powers equally. However, sometimes a she-gore spawns a whelp that is clearly a chosen of the Changer of Ways. Its fur patterned with the Mark of Tzeentch, or its horns curling to form his unholy symbol. These Centaurs are as bitter and spiteful as their non-Tzeentchian kin, with a stronger resentment for their own clumsy, awkward nature, and harboring a deep jealousy of creatures whose mind and bodies are being matched. This feeds their arcane rage and makes them much more dangerous. Having been touched by Tzeentch, this is likely no coincidence. And there's a fun little lore update right there, which is also true to recent and old world, but we'll come back to that in a moment as well, because this is just the news right now, not the discussion section. Zingors. Gameplay overview. A fast and hard-hitting unit. The Centaurs of Tzeentch carry great weapons, offering armor-piercing power to take on tougher opponents, and again, keeping with the theme they're going for here with his anti-large and halberds. Carrying the Mark of Tzeentch grants them magical attacks and barriers. Unholy combination. Combination of the Mark of Tzeentch with a Centaur stat line makes for a fast, vanguard-deploying, barrier-attuned bestial cavalry unit that benefits from standard Beastman abilities such as Rowdy and Primal Fury. Great weapons. The Centaur of Tzeentch wields armor-piercing great axes, which have been magically imbued, making them an effective unit against demons and ethereal units. And of course, arcane charged. Initially introduced with Zangors, this ability has been adapted to the My Little Magic Ponies, offering more synergy with Tzeentchian spellcasters. And obviously, this unit will be available to both Tzeentch and the Beastmen. And finally, I believe, the Changebringers unit. Last, but by no means least, are the Changebringers, a unit of flamers which fly across the battlefield on discs of Tzeentch. These horrors help Tzeentch quickly reach their enemies in battle and keep the pressure on from above. Flamers are capable of a fair turn of speed, expelling gaseous ichor through the fungoid skirt at their base to bound and leap across the ground with considerable mischievous gusto. A flamer uses its blazing limbs to hurl bolts of magical flame at the foe. This is not fire in its truest sense, but a roiling cloud of chaos energy. It does not burn, but warps reality. A flamer's victims might briefly feel invigorated before collapsing into a writhing puddle of flesh. How very Tzeentch. That's a lot of mouths. Whoa. Gameplay overview. A step up from your normal flamers of Tzeentch, Changebringers have the maneuverability, speed, and agility to be able to fly across the battlefield while ignoring the terrain and any penalties they may cause. But if need be, their increased charge bonus will help them with making the first move. Shock and awe. Changebringers are one of the ultimate expressions of the chaotic nature of Tzeentch. Flamers of Tzeentch, which are comparatively slow and lumbering units, take to the skies, benefiting from greatly increased maneuverability. Death from above. Changebringers can rain down Tzeentchian fire from above, making them one of the best flying missile units in the game. Flamers of Tzeentch. Being Flamers of Tzeentch at their core, the Changebringers benefit from the usual hallmarks of this unit. Armor-piercing, flaming attacks, and warp flame are all present. However, due to their newfound mobility, Changers don't have quite as much of a barrier when compared to their ground-based kin. They're available to Tzeentch and the Daemons of Chaos. Okay, and this is the final message from Rich Aldrich. He says, thanks for reading, and we'll be back later this week with the final blog on the great nation of Kislev and the new characters and units they'll be receiving as part of Patch 4.2. All right, so that is the Patch 4.2 update for Tzeentch. Overall, there's some pretty interesting stuff in here. So we're going to go to the boards over here on the right. So if you have any comments, make sure to post them on the side. I'm curious what you guys think so far. The first thing I want to talk about for sure is going back up and where was it? This is one that, see, I do lore stuff mainly because it's like I have to research all the lore. And there's a fun little blurb right here that I've discussed in one of my other Beastmen videos, which is it says specifically, however, sometimes a she-gore spawns a whelp. Right, so this is part of the old world's rewrite of Beastmen. Everything's been sort of sanded off the edges a little bit when it comes to certain aspects of Warhammer, and this is one of those things. It's just confirmed now that the Beastmen are their own separate race, a separate tribe with separate ladies and things like that, even though they don't appear in the game. There was a much earlier version of their lore where new Beastmen were acquired through various typical centaur means. Now, if you guys know anything about Greek history, you'll know what I mean by typical centaur means. Which, yeah, a lot of going out taking ladies that didn't want to be involved, I'll put it that way, and then slipping them a magically imbued Mickey, apparently. All right, so that's just an interesting little change right there. Let's see. Looks like purple centaurs. Very cool. Three-headed dude. Very cool unit. Love it. I wonder, because this is the 90s, if this was inspired by Monty Python and the three-headed giant ogre guy in there when they made the original unit. Curious. The focus on halberds is sort of keeping with the Tzeentch anti-large method, which is really interesting, because all these guys have that anti-large big halberd, so it keeps that feel consistent across them. It's nice to see these guys brought back in finally, especially the Chaos Knights. This is something, Chaos Lords of Tzeentch, this is something people were asking why this wasn't in the Warriors of Chaos DLC to begin with. So it's great that they're adding it, both the Shadows of Change and the Warriors of Chaos, so it hits two birds with one stone. It's just a shame we're getting it, what, a year later? And this is something that, nice apology, glad it's free, should have been there to begin with. So hopefully this is a lesson learned for them going forward. All right. Not feeling the design of the Centaur and Changebringers. Felt like low effort mods. The other two reskins are more effectively. Yeah, they're reskins. And that's the thing, is that nearly every human across every Total War game is a reskin. And that's actually true of basically every game you're playing, is that you're seeing slightly different reskins. It's just a human with a different wrap on him. So calling it a reskin here, still true. It's just, for some reason, that's become the default critique. I mean, right here, I'd be curious if these two heads are animated, because if those two heads are animated, that was a pain in the butt to do. If they're just sitting there glued on top of them, fine. But if the heads actually move, that's a heck of a lot of things. That's 2 extra bones and a whole bunch of stuff and a unique custom animation just for this guy. So I'll be curious if those heads animate or not. Because otherwise, like you guys are saying, they are reskins. Adding some extra bits and bobs on here to make him look a bit more Tzeentch inspired. Flamers, a little bit of recoloration, some extra heads still on to make it look extra monstrous. So pretty cool overall, though. And the thing is, remember, this is the thing that people said, kind of underwhelmed. Tzeentch is by far the one that had the most stuff to begin with. Tzeentch definitely made out like a bandit or chaos god in this last DLC. And you can definitely see that he didn't really need the most here, right? We already got FLC Hero, two FLC Heroes, actually, and a whole bunch of crazy units. So there wasn't really a lot missing from the roster, in my opinion. But all these changes still, though, are part of one big packet of changes, which I've never seen before from Total War, and I'm glad to see them doing it, because, I mean, we got everything coming from Cathay, everything coming from Tzeentch, and everything coming from Kislev. I'm still not sure this should have taken 6 months to do, but hey, I'm not, they've got other things going on, clearly. So it's cool to see it getting put in there, though. But individually, they're sort of meh. Together, I think they add up to something that's like, all right, this is a worthwhile change. So it's at least worth going back and taking a look at Shadows of Change with all this extra stuff added into it. But we'll see coming out of Kislev coming up next. They're definitely doing some very strong theming right here. The choice of not to use beaks for the Tzeentch, though. I mean, it's not like they're a separate race. I'm not sure why they keep saying that. It feels like that was like someone said that to them at some point, and then they just kind of ran with it. I mean, they're just Beastmen who have an extra mutation where they have a beak. So I'm not really sure where that whole they're not bird people thing is coming from. I don't know. And as I mentioned earlier, this is them saying, oh, this is respecting the IP. That could be the case. It could also be Games Workshop saying, no, don't take stuff from this other IP, or 101 other different things right there. Better late than never on the changes, right? Feathers on Centaurs, but we can't have them on Zangors. Yeah, it's a very odd choice right there, and I do wonder where that's coming from, because obviously we're never going to hear from Games Workshop on their perspective on any of this. I mean, it could be that's a Games Workshop directive, could be just a Total War choice. We don't know. They're saying it's Games Workshop. Games Workshop says nothing, so who knows? All right, the real thing is what Kislev gets. Yeah, it's really curious, because I definitely wanted Ungles. not Ungles. Yeah, Ungles units. The sort of like the difference between like the steppe people versus the main of Kislev, and that's what I really stressed. More toward like a horse archer faction, things like that. But they've already said previously they're not going to do that. So I'll be very curious what they do go with. We've already gotten a hint that the Golden Knight will probably appear, and the Golden Knight, for anyone not in the know, is a champion of Kislev, sort of like a knightly champion. Meant to go out fight on their behalf, stuff like that. So I think they're going to double down more on that. I really hope we don't get a bunch more of the witches, like random monster units, because they already don't particularly fit with the rest of Kislev. Like, they're great for specialized just for her, but I really felt that should have been done more like a Dryka situation, which if you guys ever played the Wood Elf campaign, Dryka gets a bunch of additional stuff that the rest of the Wood Elves don't, because it's thematic to her. So I'll be curious how they handle that. But overall, what are you guys thinking about Tzeentch? What do you think about it so far? 2 Warbear variants. Oh, gosh. Oh, more Warbears. The last things they need. Yeah, and it's interesting to see here that they've gone back in and made sure to do like the rest of the disc of Tzeentch units, really doubling down on that unique feel that Tzeentch has, trying to keep them, frankly, a bit Tzeentchy, for lack of a description. I do wonder who drew this. Pretty good. And it's like, hey, yeah, you can definitely see how that became that. It reminds me of Grimgore's belly buckle thing, because I've been working on his video. All right. Aren't the Kossars technically Ungles? Good question. Yes and no. So this comes from another problem they're having with a lot of these units coming in right here, is this is borrowing on 30 years worth of lore, and the lore's contradictory. They were in one version, but they weren't in another version. And as these things change, what did X say when he got stabbed by Z? Why? Oh. Thanks, Amit. And also thank you for the tip right there. I appreciate it. The problem with the changing lore is who people are, how they relate to each other, changes from edition to edition. And there has not been an updated Kislev book yet, although we know one is coming for the old world. And I would suspect that whatever we see for Kislev here is probably closer to whatever representation they're going to go with in the final version for Old World as well. But that's what I would expect. I mean, if they're gearing up to give you something that's going to appear on a tabletop, I could see them having removed that weird sort of interpersonal dynamic, or clan conflict thing. It had a lot of shades of, frankly, the Russian Revolution and stuff attack to it, with the Kossars and things like that. And there's a lot of history going on in there they may want to avoid. So I don't know. I'll be curious what they do go with. Maybe you've seen the Total logo, like a news jingle. I haven't figured out how to do sound yet. As soon as I do, I will make sure to let you guys have the proper news intro at the beginning. For now, I'm just going to welcome to Total War News. I don't know. All right, everyone. So that is, but in the old world, should Kislev be pre-Boris? So no pre-firepower. So the firepower, you're talking about guns and things like that. So it appears that they're not changing the technology too much. The technology, because it's the same units from Warhammer Fantasy, is roughly the same. There's actually a decent lore explanation for this, weirdly enough, is that pretty much in any society dependent on magic, a lot of technology is stagnated. So a 200-year difference doesn't make as much of a difference because not as much changes, because in the world of magic makes anything possible, is what I've heard described for a lot of stuff like that. But as far as the actual units and things like that, I would expect them to still be gunpowder, because they're very much drawing on the existing tabletop model base from Warhammer Fantasy from 10 years ago. All right. 3 hits for Slash's pleasure. Womp, womp, womp. Last blog implemented that focusing on modern Kislev. Yeah, so I would see more guns, more cannons. I could definitely see people sort of leaning into that heavier. I think people really want a gun heavier faction, weirdly enough. People enjoy that aspect of the Empire. People enjoy that aspect of Cathay. And I think anything where people are sort of leaning into that would be pretty cool. I think there's definitely room for a steampunk-esque faction. I'm not sure it's Kislev, but Talia, Stalia, things like that going forward. It'd be kind of fun. All right, folks, and that is Total War News, patch 4.2, the Tzeentch update coming forward. We have one more blog still to come, which will be Kislev, which theoretically will be releasing later this week, and it sounds like we are getting the actual full update next week, probably on Thursdays, typically when they do this sort of thing. So That's it moving forward. Thank you guys for tuning into the stream today. And I love doing this live with you. Hopefully you guys had fun with it. And I want to figure out how to do a jingle before next week because I've been having a great time with this. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. And thanks for watching Total War News. I'm Cody Bonds. Have a nice day.